the Badreddin brothers were trying to convert the kids to Islam. I mean, that's quite scary, isn't it?
Yeah, there were numerous threats that were made. I mean, there was a girl who was threatened to be killed and have a body dumped somewhere. There was, they threatened as well to just take one of them out of the country. So all of these things, as a 13 to 16-year-old girl, these are big threats from more powerful men. And they were young men, but they're still men at the time of these brutal assaults. I think there's this idea about the conversion to Islam as well. It's, bear in mind, we are obviously dealing with sick monsters here. So, I'm not sure that's necessarily the central point, but it does beg the question: what would that have served? Would that have made them feel better about what they were doing? Are there maybe different rules in the Quran about what you can do with people at that age? I don't know. But either way, it appears to be an egregious attempt to assert your cultural dominance over somebody else. And on this, those two brothers, whilst they were on bail for the offences, they attended a Black Lives Matter protest in Newcastle, where they were also, I believe, arrested for crimes including hurling missiles at people, and I think maybe a fray as well. I'll double check that, but they both committed other offences. So that was them taking part in an anti-racism demonstration, and there were also protests which the BBC Newsnight documentary, I believe, covered as well, which was, at the time, there were well, I suppose they described themselves as these Patriot Marches through Newcastle, because they'd started to see an influx of people from places like Syria, and some people were not particularly happy about that. Now, okay, probably some people there, I imagine, maybe were quite bigoted, but the way that the BBC gave that prominence, and then obviously then you play the tape forward there, and yes, I'm not saying that these people should have necessarily gone out and, well, they definitely shouldn't have gone out and hurled racist abuse at anyone ever. But what I am saying is that there is a certain irony in the fact that ultimately what happened with these two brothers is that they were convicted of multiple counts of abuse. Yeah. The most heinous kind, and are serving lengthy prison sentences. And there is an irony there, I think.
I think also, I mean, the fact that, as you say, attending a BLM march and they see themselves as part of the anti-racist leftist movement, I suppose, is maybe a time to mention the Islamo left, as some people speak of it as, and maybe divided loyalties that we're seeing in the Labour Party and the Green Party.
So this is a really fascinating moment in history, isn't it? Because we are now seeing the culmination of mass immigration, specifically in this context, Islamic immigration, and then second and third generation Islamic community in Britain, versus the left wing, and you include with that some of the things like the quite aggressive pro-trans agenda, etc. And you are now seeing those things coming together. Now, for a very long time, in my view, the left courted the quotes unquote Muslim vote. And I think that's a reasonable thing to suggest.
Sure.
The problem is, where does that lead? Because that would only really work if that quotes unquote Muslim vote had then assimilated to a degree where they naturally joined in with other left-wing ideologies, such as being, loosely speaking, very, very pro-LGBT, etc., which I don't think has happened. Right? I don't think has happened in Britain to a large extent. And this is a major problem in politics, and this is one of the issues that Keir Starmer has got. And we're seeing the Breakaway Group now, the Gaza gang, those 5 MPs, who I'm sure would not appreciate me calling them that. One of whom has just recently gone into bat for cousin marriage.
Yes,
actually, Iqbal Mohammed, which was a remarkable intervention in the House of Commons, I thought. He happens to be the MP for Batley and Dewsbury, which is the same area where we saw the Batley Grammar School incident.
Right.
So we are now seeing this, what was an unholy alliance, I think, and almost like a vote herding operation, crumbling before our eyes. And we actually saw that in the most direct sense with something that I don't think Keir Starmer got enough stick for, and I think actually could have been a resigning matter. When there was one of the many votes on a potential Gaza ceasefire, and this was relatively early on, There was a huge protest outside Westminster. I was at that protest. There was a huge protest outside Westminster, and the SNP had brought a motion in the House of Commons to have a vote on it, which would have put the Labour Party in an incredibly difficult position, because about half of Keir Starmer's front bench, I suspect, would have voted for a ceasefire. Yeah. And his position at the time was not to have a ceasefire. He'd have lost half of his shadow front bench. He'd have lost goodness knows however many MPs behind him. And there was an inclination that there was probably an election coming up at some point soon. So what did he do? Well, the allegation is that he or Sue Gray or someone else essentially went into Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons office, and leant on him and used language not dissimilar to the idea of, look, can you live yourself if we have this divided vote here, because the MPs are getting threatened, people are getting threatened here. We've had people turning up at people's offices and homes. And of course they had, but that was a situation that the Labour Party had to deal with at the time. And Lindsay Hoyle, inexplicably and without precedent, as far as I can gather, ditched the vote, canned the vote. And that saved Starmer from having to be confronted by the reality of his own politics, which is a left-wing socialist, I would argue to the extreme, intermingled with a load of very pro-Gaza individuals. A large portion of that, I believe, are also, like you might describe them as the Islamo left. That would have been the moment, the culmination of, can this party and can that ideology actually coexist?